I had my doubts about the day from the moment I woke up. The sky was gray, typical for late autumn, and there was a chill in the air that seemed to seep through the windows. I was scheduled to interview the state governor, an opportunity any journalist would kill for, and yet, I was uneasy. Maybe it was the weight of responsibility or the fact that my little Ellie had woken up with a slight fever. Either way, the day felt off. I dropped Ellie off at my mom's place, giving her a quick kiss on the forehead before heading to the governor's office. My mom, always the worrier, said, "Make sure you watch yourself around those politicians. They're all smiles and handshakes until they're not." At the governor's office, I was met by his assistant, a man named Tom. He was a bit older than me, probably edging into his early 40s, with a sharp suit and a smile that managed to be both professional and warm. "Clara, right? Heard a lot about you. All good, promise," he said, extending his hand. "Yeah, that's me. And you're Tom? I appreciate the help setting this up," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. The interview itself went better than expected. The governor was forthcoming, even charming, and I got some good quotes that I knew would make my editor happy. But it was Tom who caught my attention. He lingered nearby, always watching, making sure everything was in order. After the interview, while I was packing up my recorder and notes, Tom came over. "You got plans after this? There's a decent coffee place just around the corner. Their espresso will knock your socks off." I hesitated for a moment. It wasn't like me to mix work with anything personal, but there was something about Tom's straightforward manner that was disarming. "Sure, why not? I could use a good coffee after this," I replied. At the coffee shop, the conversation flowed easily. Tom talked about his daughter Amy, who was about to graduate high school and had plans for college. "She's got her mother's brains. Smart as a whip. I just try to keep up," he laughed. "I know the feeling. My Ellie's only 6, and she already outsmarts me daily," I said, laughing along. We talked more about our kids than anything else. It was refreshing to have a conversation that wasn't just about work or politics. Tom's demeanor was relaxed, and he didn't push the conversation in any direction it didn't naturally want to go. It was like talking to an old friend. As we left the coffee shop, Tom said, "Listen, Clara, I know you're not looking for anything serious. Heck, I'm not either. But I liked this, talking, laughing. How about we do this again? No pressure, no expectations." I looked at him, really looked. He was sincere, that much was clear. "Yeah, I'd like that," I admitted, a bit surprised at my own readiness to dive back into something personal. There I was, 2 years into what started as a not-a-date routine with Tom, and suddenly I found myself staring at a small, shiny ring, feeling like the world had stopped spinning for just a second. We were at our favorite little Italian place, tucked away in a corner booth that had become our spot. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows that danced around Tom's serious expression. He just popped the question, simple and straight, no fluff. "Clara, I'm not good with fancy speeches. So, how about it? Will you marry me?" Looking into his hopeful eyes, all I managed was, "Are you sure? Because, you know, life with me is a 3-ring circus." Tom laughed, that deep, reassuring sound that had first drawn me to him. "I'm counting on it. Ellie's a part of the deal, right? Wouldn't have it any other way." "Okay then, yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yes, I'll marry you." Tom's place was bigger, with a yard that seemed to stretch forever and rooms that echoed with the potential of new memories. The first evening we spent there, Tom cooked dinner, something he'd become famous for during our not-a-date dates. Ellie watched him like a hawk, her curiosity barely contained. "Tom, are you sure you know how to cook? Mom usually burns the pasta," she stated matter-of-factly, standing on tiptoe to peer over the counter. Tom winked at her, tossing vegetables in a pan with a chef's flair. "I promise I won't burn anything." Scout's honor. The transition wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. Ellie and I were used to it being just the two of us against the world. Now, Tom was in the mix, with his easy smiles and a way of making even the hardest day seem manageable. We were learning to be a family, and not just any family, a good one, a real one. Life in Tom's house was starting to feel more like home every day, but there was still one piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit: his daughter, Amy. She was in college in another city, and we didn't see her much. The few times we did, the air felt charged, like a storm was always about to break. Amy came home for Thanksgiving, and I wanted everything to be perfect, to maybe smooth out some of the awkwardness that seemed to cling to the walls whenever she was around. I was in the kitchen when she walked in, her bags dropping to the floor with a thud. "Hey, Amy, good to see you. Let me help with that," I offered, moving towards her. She gave me a half-smile, more out of politeness than warmth. "Thanks, Clara. I've got it." Tom was all smiles, ruffling her hair like she was still 10 years old. "Kiddo, your mom sent some of that pumpkin pie you love. Bet you missed real food at college, huh?" Amy rolled her eyes, but there was a small smile there that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, Dad. College food is the worst." Dinner was a quiet affair, with Ellie trying to fill the silence with chatter about her school projects and the new friends she had made. Amy nodded and made the right noises, but spent more time pushing her food around the plate than eating it. After dinner, I caught her in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Amy, can we chat? I feel like we never really got off on the right foot here," I ventured, keeping my tone light. She looked up, her expression guarded. "We're fine, Clara. There's no issue to fix." I took a deep breath, choosing my words. "I know it's weird, me being here and all. I'm not trying to replace anyone or step on toes. I just want us to be okay, you know?" Amy put her phone down, her face softening a bit. "I get it. It's not you. It's weird seeing him move on, I guess." "I understand. Just know I'm here, alright? For you, too," I replied, hoping to bridge the gap between us. She nodded, a bit of the ice melting. "Thanks, Clara. I'll try to be less of a hermit, okay?" It was a start, and I'd take it. The weekend passed quicker than I wanted, and soon it was time for Amy to head back to college. She hugged her dad, gave Ellie a high five, and to my surprise, she turned to hug me too. It was quick and a bit awkward, but it was something. "Take care, Amy. Keep in touch, okay?" I said, feeling like we'd turned a corner. Ellie, who had been unusually quiet, tugged at my hand. "Is Amy mad at me? She doesn't talk much." I knelt down to her level, smoothing back her hair. "No, sweetie, she's not mad. She's just used to being on her own. We'll keep trying, okay?" Navigating new family dynamics was never going to be easy, but I believed in us. With patience and a lot of open hearts, I hoped we'd find our way to being not just a family by name, but one in spirit too. My job as a journalist meant erratic hours and sudden trips out of town, but Tom had stepped up in ways I hadn't even dared to hope for. He picked Ellie up from school, made dinner, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the rhythm of our new life together. Initially, Ellie was thrilled, always chattering about her day on the ride home, eager to show off the little projects she'd done in class. "She's really taken to you, Tom," I told him one evening, watching them assemble a puzzle on the living room floor. He looked up, a smile creasing his eyes. "She's a great kid, Clara. Couldn't ask for a better stepdaughter." But a few months in, I noticed a shift in Ellie. She became quieter, more reserved. The light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a skittishness that set alarm bells ringing in my mind. I tried to coax her into talking, to share what was on her mind, but she just shrugged and forced a smile. "It's nothing, Mom. Just tired, I guess," she'd say, but the mother in me knew better. Something was off. Then one night, as we were getting ready for bed, I noticed a bruise on her arm, a nasty, purple shadow that made my heart stop. "Ellie, what happened?" I asked gently, trying not to sound as panicked as I felt. She avoided my gaze, fiddling with the hem of her pajama top. "I fell down at school. It was silly." I wasn't looking where I was going. But the bruise looked like it had a story that didn't involve a simple fall. My mind raced with dark thoughts of bullying. Did someone do this to you at school? You can tell me, Ellie. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. No, Mom. It was just me being clumsy. Really. The next day, I dropped by her school and spoke with her teacher, Mrs. Jennings, a kind woman who had always been open about classroom dynamics. Mrs. Jennings, has Ellie been having any trouble with other kids? Any signs of bullying? Mrs. Jennings looked genuinely surprised. Oh, no, Clara. Ellie gets along well with everyone. She's a quiet child, but she's not having any problems with other children that I've noticed. That left me more unsettled. If school was fine, then what was causing Ellie's change in behavior and the mysterious bruise? My mind churned with possibilities, none of them good. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I decided to buy a smartwatch that could record audio. I told myself it was for Ellie's safety, that I wasn't invading her privacy but protecting her. When I gave her the watch, her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in weeks. Wow, a smartwatch? For me? Ellie's voice was filled with excitement. Yep, you can wear it to school and everywhere. Think of it as an early birthday gift, I explained, trying to keep my voice cheerful. I watched her strap the watch to her wrist, her fingers fumbling with excitement. My heart was heavy with mixed feelings as she admired it. I hoped the watch would provide answers, that it was just my overactive imagination at work and nothing more. The routine with the smartwatch started off innocent enough. For days, all I heard were snippets of school lessons and the mundane chit-chat of children's lives. Ellie seemed happier at school, laughing and interacting freely, which was a stark contrast to her quiet demeanor at home. It gave me some peace of mind, hearing her like that. But that peace was shattered one busy afternoon at work. I had stepped out for a quick lunch at my desk, popping in my earbuds to listen to the latest recordings from Ellie's watch. It was a habit now, checking in on her world, making sure she was okay. That day, however, I was met with something that stopped me cold. Tom's voice boomed through the tiny speakers, harsh and cruel. You're such a fool, Ellie. Why can't you ever listen? His words were sharp, each one a dagger. The reply was a small, stifled sob, unmistakably Ellie's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Then the sound, a sharp slap, the kind of sound that echoes long after it's over, followed by Ellie's crying. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. My heart raced, anger and shock warring inside me. This wasn't just a small misunderstanding. This was my worst fear laid bare. I sat frozen, my lunch forgotten, as the world continued bustling around me. I couldn't think straight. All I knew was I needed to get to Ellie, to hold her, to get her away from him. I rushed home, my mind racing, planning, dreading. When I arrived, Ellie was there, alone, sitting quietly in her room. Seeing her like that, so small, so vulnerable, it broke something inside me. Ellie, baby, we need to talk, I said gently, sitting beside her on the bed. She looked up, her eyes wide and scared. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. I know about Tom, about how he's been treating you. You don't have to be scared anymore. I heard everything. The floodgates opened then, and she poured out everything. The threats, the hits, how he'd made her promise not to tell me, how scared she was that it was somehow her fault. My heart ached with every word. I packed a few things quickly and drove her to my parents' house. They were horrified when I told them everything, and they didn't hesitate to take us in. Stay here tonight, my mom said, her voice firm with that maternal resolve. We'll take care of Ellie. You go sort this out. I hugged Ellie goodbye, her small arms clinging to me a moment longer than usual. I'll fix this, I promise, I whispered, kissing her forehead. Leaving her there, safe with my parents, I drove back home. The house seemed darker, colder. I sat on the couch, the silence oppressive, waiting for Tom to come home. My mind raced with what I would say, how I would confront him. Anger, fear, betrayal, it all swirled inside me, a storm waiting to break. The sound of the front door opening and Tom's cheerful whistling sliced through the tense silence of the living room where I was waiting. He came in, all smiles, utterly unaware of the storm that was about to break. "Hey, babe. What's for dinner?" His voice rang through the house, light and carefree. I stood up, my stomach churning with nerves and anger. "We need to talk. Now," I said, my voice steely and calm. The smile faltered on his face. "Sure, what's up? You look serious." "It's about Ellie," I began, watching as his expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What about her? Is she okay?" He took a step towards me, his brow creased. I cut him off, the fury building inside me. "No, Tom, she's not okay. Because of you." He stopped, his face a mask of bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the abuse, Tom. I know how you've been treating her when I'm not around." The words felt like bullets, each one harder to say than the last. For a moment, he just stared at me, and then he laughed. A cold, harsh sound that echoed mockingly around the room. "You're being ridiculous. You have no proof. You think you can take me down? With what? Your overactive imagination?" His arrogance boiled my blood. "I have more than enough proof, Tom." He smirked, stepping closer. "Come on, Clara. You and I both know you're bluffing. If you push this, I'll make sure you regret it. I can destroy your career, drag your name through the mud. Don't forget, I have connections that you can't even dream of." The threat hung in the air, heavy and sinister. But I was ready for him. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recording of his tirade against Ellie. His voice filled the room, cruel and unmistakable. Tom's face went white, his confident demeanor crumbling as the reality of his situation dawned on him. "Clara, please, I was just stressed, I didn't mean." "Save it, Tom. I'm done listening to your excuses." I watched as he sank to his knees, his face crumpled in fear. "Clara, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, I can change. Don't do this. Don't ruin my career and my life. You should have thought about that before you hurt our daughter. You're not getting away with it this time." I stood firm, despite the part of my heart that ached to see him so broken. But I had to be strong, for Ellie. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I walked past Tom, still kneeling on the floor, and opened the door to 2 police officers. I had called them before Tom got home, the final step in ensuring my daughter's safety. "Officers, thank you for coming. He's in here," I said, leading them into the living room. Tom looked up, the fear apparent in his eyes as the officers read him his rights and handcuffed him. He muttered pleas for forgiveness as they led him away, but I felt nothing but a hollow relief. Ellie was safe now, and that was all that mattered. After the door closed behind them, the silence was deafening. I sank down onto the couch, the adrenaline fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I knew this was only the beginning of a long battle, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Ellie was safe, and Tom would face the consequences of his actions. It wasn't long before the news exploded, splashing across every headline and becoming the talk of the town. But nothing prepared me for the knock on my door early one morning, just as the chaos was unfolding. I opened the door to find my first husband, Michael, the father of Ellie, standing there, his face etched with concern and a hint of anger. Beside him stood his lawyer, a sharply dressed man known for his ruthless courtroom tactics, his reputation preceding him. "Clara, we need to talk," Michael said without wasting a moment, pushing past the formalities as his lawyer followed suit. I sighed, stepping aside to let them in. "I guess we do." Once we were all seated in the living room, his lawyer, Mr. Davidson, wasted no time. "Clara, Michael here is very concerned about the welfare of Ellie and how the scandal could affect her. We want to ensure that her interests are protected, legally and financially." Michael chimed in, his voice firm. "Clara, I won't let our daughter be dragged through the mud because of him. What were you thinking, getting involved with a guy like that? I bristled at his tone, my own anger rising. I was thinking that I found someone decent, which he seemed to be, until he wasn't. I'm handling it, Michael. As we debated back and forth, my phone buzzed. It was Amy, Tom's daughter, a message filled with urgency. I have something you need to see. Can we meet? I excused myself and stepped outside to call her. Amy, what's going on? Clara, I've got evidence. Evidence of what he did, not just to Ellie, but to me too, when I was younger. I'm ready to stand with you in court. Amy's voice was resolute, a stark contrast to the young woman who'd been so unsure before. Thank you, Amy. This means a lot. Let's bring this to light, all of it, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. Back inside, I relayed the news to Michael and Mr. Davidson. Looks like we'll have more than just our word against his. We have evidence, solid evidence, and his own daughter's testimony. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, Clara. We'll support you in this, all the way. Just make sure it's handled with Ellie's best interest at heart. The court date was a spectacle, with reporters swarming the courthouse. Amy took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted years of hidden abuse. The evidence she provided was undeniable, the impact on the courtroom palpable. When the judge finally passed the sentence, it was more than I had dared to hope for. Tom was found guilty of child abuse and domestic violence. The judge awarded a significant fine in favor of both me and Amy, and Tom was sentenced to prison. His political career, his reputation, everything crumbled in the wake of his actions. The fresh start was exactly what Ellie and I needed. After everything that happened, buying a new house felt like claiming back a piece of ourselves that had been lost in the chaos. The house was smaller, cozier, a place where the shadows of our past couldn't reach us. Moving day was a mix of laughter and hard work, with boxes labeled Ellie's stuff outnumbering everything else. Mom, can I paint my room purple this time? Ellie asked, her eyes sparkling with the sort of excitement that had been missing for too long. Sure thing, kiddo. Whatever you want, I replied, grateful to see her so happy, so full of life again. We spent that first night on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes, eating pizza, and planning out what we'd do with each room. It was perfect, just the two of us, and yet, there was a new addition to our little family dynamic that I hadn't anticipated. Amy, Tom's daughter, had become a fixture in our lives. After the trial, something shifted between us. The shared trauma had bound us together, and she started coming around more often, helping with the house, bringing over books she thought Ellie would like, or just hanging out, talking about everything and nothing. Clara, you really didn't have to redo the guest room just for me, Amy said one afternoon as she helped me peel off old wallpaper. It's not just for you. It's your room, whenever you need it. Your family now, Amy, I said, and I meant it. She smiled, a little watery-eyed, and we went back to our task. In a twist I never saw coming, Michael, my ex-husband, started showing up too. First, it was to drop off Ellie or pick her up, but then it became coffee visits, then dinners. We talked a lot, about Ellie, about our past, about how we could never have imagined our lives intertwining like this again. Clara, I appreciate you letting me back in, after everything, Michael said to me one evening as we sat on the new deck, watching Ellie and Amy chase each other around the backyard. Michael, we're navigating through uncharted waters, but I think we're doing just fine, I replied, the ease between us a pleasant surprise. The relationship with Michael evolved, slow and steady. We were parents first, friends second, and if there was a hint of something more, we let it grow at its own pace. Ellie thrived in the new environment. Her laughter filled the house, her smiles more frequent and brighter. Seeing her like this, I knew we had made the right decision. Mom, look. I taught Amy how to make slime. Ellie exclaimed one Saturday morning, her hands and face speckled with glitter. Amy came into the kitchen, looking like she had fought a battle with a unicorn and lost. Yeah, she did. I think I have glitter in my hair still, she said, trying to brush it out, but laughing. Watching them together, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had weathered a storm, fought hard battles, and now, here we were, building a life full of hope and happiness. As the days grew warmer, our little household found its rhythm. We were a patchwork family, each of us with our own scars and stories, but together, we were whole.